Thanks for joining us on The Road Home to You, a podcast where we talk about what it means to be a broken, messy Christian in a broken, messy world. We understand that living a life of faith is hard to do, and sometimes even hard to understand. So let's talk about it. Grab your road trip snacks and a buddy, buckle up, and let's head on down that long road home. Hey friends, welcome to The Road Home to You. I am Brandy Gable.
And I'm Matt Gable.
It is so good to have you with us today.
Yes, it is.
Hooray for today.
Hooray for today indeed, because it is a beautiful day.
It is a gorgeous fall day here in the Pacific Northwest. It's all the colors have turned.
Yes.
Or are turning, and it's sunny and chill, but not
cold.
Too cold.
Right.
Yes, it's that perfect sweater weather where you just want to have a sweatshirt or your scarf or something like that to snuggle up in.
Yeah.
It's perfect. I love it.
Yep. It's really nice.
It's my favorite time of year. Do you know why?
Why?
Because it's my birthday time. The whole reason we have the month of October is to celebrate me, right?
Of course.
Of course. That's
Although
not true.
Your mom might object to that.
My mom and my grandma and probably millions of other people. But hey, whatever.
Yes.
But it is definitely my favorite time of the year because I love the crispness of the air and the colors, and
yeah,
I just love everything about the fall.
Yeah. I don't know, it's always so sad too because in Oregon, this time of year is always so very fleeting.
Yeah.
You know, you just have this brief window where the weather is that kind of perfect fall weather. And the colors, the leaves, that doesn't last very long. So it's kind of, when you get one of those perfect days, you really want to savor it because you know it's not going to last. And pretty soon it's just going to be the endless gray drizzle of winter.
The Pacific Northwest that everyone knows and hates.
Not everybody hates it, but yeah, it can get old.
It can.
Usually by about March.
After endless days of rain. Well, hey, so speaking of endless days of rain. Yes. I'm sure that's a really great segue for what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
I don't know how.
I don't know either, but you know, that's okay. We're going to go with it because it's there now.
So what we're going to talk about today is now that we're like sitting at the microphone, I'm like, this is a morbid question.
It is, but it's also so very important, and it's something, even though it's morbid, that we should be thinking about more often.
Right. And that question is, if you only had 6 months to live, what would you do? The idea to do this episode came from the fact that you and I are both starting to lead Genesis process groups at our church. You're having your first meeting tonight. I'm having my first meeting tomorrow morning. Yeah. And we're both very excited about that. But in the process, we're going through the process too. And because that's how Genesis works. And so as we were going through our homework, one of the questions that came up is, what are your current priorities? Like, how do you spend the bulk of your time? And it was kind of in regards to the areas of entertainment and family and work and ministry and time with God and that kind of thing. And so you had to list out the way you are currently spending your time. Like, what are your priorities now versus what you would like them to be? And then the follow-up question is that if you had
just had 6 months.
Yeah. What would you do? How would you live? And I thought that was a really poignant question because this is the second time I've gone through Genesis. And I think that the first time that I answered this question, I'd have to go back and look, but I think that the first time I went through it like 8 years ago, I don't think I answered it as honestly, maybe. I mean, I think I was trying to be honest, but I think I was still also trying to give the right answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was tempted to do that. You know, I was tempted to give this answer that would, be, oh, I think they're looking for this. Or my answer ought to be this.
I think that's what it is. Like, well, my answer should be that this is how I'd spend all 6 months just like studying my Bible and drawing near to God and and that's not really how I would spend my final 6 months.
No.
And that certainly isn't how I'm spending my time now. So it was a really interesting chance to kind of self-reflect a little bit. So do you want to go first or should I go first?
I can go first if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm afraid my answer is not very interesting, largely because the place I did answer honestly, which makes my answer less interesting, I think, strangely enough, mostly because the financial place we're in, I would still have to work. If I was still capable of working, I would still have to work for at least a good chunk of that 6 months. Just to continue to pay bills and things like that. And I definitely have to continue making the life insurance payment,
Yes, you would.
But, there's all the other things too that I'd have to keep up with. So I'd have to keep working. But it's what I would do with the leftover time. I definitely wouldn't work any overtime. I wouldn't set foot inside that building for 1 minute longer than I had to, I think. And any time after that would be, I think I would drop everything else and I would just spend time with family and really try to connect with everybody that I cared about as much as I possibly could for the next 6 months. As well as some of that, quiet reflection, God connection time as well.
Do you have anything in your life where like you would, because you sometimes will hear the phrase like, when you're on your deathbed, like you're not going to regret the times that your house wasn't clean or the hours that you didn't work overtime or whatever. Do you think you would kind of reflect back and go, man, I wish I would have spent more time doing this thing instead of, working overtime or whatever?
I don't know. The times that I've spent working overtime, it hasn't been because, oh, wow, I just really enjoy work and I want to stay here.
Right. Yeah, you're not a workaholic.
No. So if I'm continuing to stay at work, it's to pay bills.
Yeah.
So, sure, I regret that stuff because I just as soon not have as many bills.
I regret that the IRS requires taxes.
Right? Yeah, well, that's the least of our bills. Yeah. But anyway, no, I don't know. I don't think I really I have regrets over some of the choices that I made earlier in life. I made some poor choices here and there. And if I could do it over again, yeah, I would change those. But for the most part, like, where I've spent my time and energy and effort day in and day out, I wouldn't change a thing because whenever I get a chance, I'm spending time with the people that I love and I'm investing in them. Yeah. That's what it's all about.
So here's a question that we hadn't talked about, like, hey, let's talk about this thing. So this is putting you completely on the spot. But what would you hope that people would say to you or say about you in a eulogy?
I would hope that people would say that I did the best I could to love the people that were around me and that I also did the best I could to live my life with integrity and to live out the things that I said I believed and to live out the life that God laid in front of me. Man, outside of those, if the people near me testify to the fact that I love God and was committed to Him, His word, and doing the things that He wanted me to do, that's all I need.
Yeah. So for me, this was kind of an interesting exercise because this weekend, as you know, I spent with my mom. And I just got back this morning. And it was really interesting because this morning I had an opportunity to look through my dad's old Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad has been gone now for 22 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He died in December of 1997, and I can't do math. So we'll let the audience figure that one out.
Yeah.
But, it's been a long while since he's been around. And so this morning I was sitting in my mom's office, and I was looking through Dad's Bible, and it was neat to see, his handwriting and his thoughts on what Scripture was saying and revelations that he was making and some of those things. And then I came across a letter that was all folded up and muddy and kind of gross looking. And it was a letter that I had written to Dad 2 years after he died.
Mm-hmm.
It was Father's Day, and I stuck it. My mom and brother and I went to Dad's graveside that Father's Day, and I stuck that letter all folded up down next to his headstone, kind of in the ground. And when we left, my mom apparently grabbed that letter and stuck it in Dad's Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was unfolding it this morning, and I was like, what in the world? What is this? And then I read it, and it was me just commenting on, life without Dad. And I was pregnant with Evan at the time. So I was talking about that and how I was worried because our first pregnancy we had lost. But I was also excited because he had been such a good example of a dad, and he and Mom together had been such good examples of parents and a married couple and stuff. And then as I was going through his Bible some more, I found an accounting that Dad had written of the 2 weeks while his mom was in the hospital dying from complications due to diabetes. And it was just this poignant retelling. I mean, because it was all... there was some, some personal narrative in there and some comments and thoughts and feelings about it and stuff. And, but it was also just this kind of factual retelling of events. But it was neat because there were moments where he was talking about his mom. My dad grew up Mormon, as you know. And so his mom is Mormon. And so there were times when he just got to sit next to his mom and pray with her and pray over her. And they became prayer buddies during that 2 weeks. And he was talking about just spending that time with her. And I remember that time super well because this was shortly before we got married. Mm-hmm. And I was there for that final week. And I remember going in and out of Grandma's room, and I remember reading just a ton of the Bible to her and praying over her while she was sleeping and just holding her hand and telling her how much Jesus loved her, and all these things. And regretting the fact that I hadn't gotten to spend time with her. And I hadn't really gotten to know her very well. I never knew my grandma as a person. Mm-hmm. Like she was always kind of in the background. And we didn't spend a lot of time with my dad's side of the family. And when we did, she was just kind of a wallflower. She just kind of took care of food and made sure that there was candy in the candy dish, because that's what grandmas did in the 80s. And I loved her. I loved her very much, and she loved us kids very much. But there's regret that I didn't get a chance to really get to know her. Mm-hmm. And so I'm reading this accounting of my dad talking about the time that his mom died, and here my dad has died also, and so it was just this like, oh my gosh, like it just hit me this morning like really hard. Mm-hmm. That we have no idea the impact that we have on people, and we have no idea the time that we have left. And as I was driving home, it's a 2.5 hour drive, and I was praying, and I was like, God, I just want to live my time well. Mm-hmm. I just want to be useful with it. Yeah. And I was like, God, even if the next 2 hours are the last 2 hours of my life, if I die on the way home, I want to spend that 2 hours well and wisely. Mm-hmm. And all I could do for that 2 hours was I just kind of intermittently cried and prayed, and It's kind of all I could do because it was really emotional this morning. And I clearly still am. I'm kind of choking up. And so as I was answering this question in our Genesis book, what I was thinking about is kind of the same thing in terms of like, I would drop everything that I could, that was peripheral. Like the first thing I wrote down was I would put down the damn phone, Yeah. Because my cell phone eats up so much stupid time.
Mm-hmm.
I spend far too much time playing games and checking social media and listening to podcasts. But here's the thing. I'm listening to podcasts that don't edify. Mm-hmm. They don't build me up. They don't challenge me. They don't encourage my faith. They don't grow me as a person.
Right.
They just entertain me. Which, not that entertainment is bad. I think we need entertainment. Mm-hmm. And I think you need some downtime for your brain to just kind of be sort of empty for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I think I tend to empty my brain far too often. And the thing that I would want to do is I would want to keep podcasting because I'd want to continue to share God's love with everybody who would listen.
And I think it's important to try to pass on whatever lessons, whatever hard-won lessons we've learned in this life from God, we need to pass on to the people around us.
Yeah.
Because, those people that we're connected with in one way or another, those lessons are going to have a greater impact because they're within the context of our life. And they can go, you know what? I shared life with this person. I know what this was like for them. So this lesson has weight and it has meaning.
Right. Yeah. 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 I'd want to keep podcasting for that reason. I'd want to keep serving in church. Mm-hmm. And I would want to spend as much time with family and friends as I possibly could. And one of the things that I'd want to do is I would want to write letters to you, to Evan, and to Molly for all of the situations that might come up, for all of the things in the future that I might not be there for. Molly walking down the aisle, having her first child, Evan making the hard, scary step of proposing to the woman that he loves. When days are hard, just writing letters to address those times. Like I might not be there with you physically, but I'm there with you in my heart and in your heart.
Yeah.
And,
see, I don't think I could do letters. I think I would probably just do video. Like I'd just have a camera and I would You'd Tony Stark it. Yep.
I love you 3000. But that's the thing, and that's one of the things that I love about recording is the fact that one of my favorite things that I have, I've got two things from Dad that mean the world to me. And one is a letter that he wrote after he and I had gotten into a big argument about something. And he wrote and he said, "I'm not always the best dad, but I always love you." And then the other thing is his recording of his song, Man on Calvary, which I played in one of our previous episodes. And to hear his voice and to hear his laugh, those things mean so much to me because there are times where I'm like for whatever reason, I'm feeling super sentimental about my dad right now. And I wish he was here. And I know that, one day I'll get to see him again, but I miss him in the here and the now. And there are times where I'm like, gosh, I wish I could just call him up on the phone. And there are times when I'll hear somebody else laugh or even clear their throat. And I swear it sounds just like my dad. I mean, it's weird how throat clearing has a distinct sound for people, but it does. And I like the fact that I can go back and I have these tangible reminders of my dad. And I would want to pass that on to you and to the kids and to my mom and my brother and, to people who I've had those kinds of close, intimate relationships with.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is all, like really deep and heavy, but I just have to share.
Okay.
I have to lighten it up for a moment because you were talking about recording a message for when Evan makes the hard decision to propose. And I'm thinking about, what is that going to look like? And I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to do it while he's playing a video game and he's talking to his fiance over headset. That's what that's going to be.
Or he's going to be like, hey, roll your dice for marriage. And if you're not a gamer, that doesn't make any sense to you.
Right.
But trust us, it's funny.
But you get an automatic plus 20.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh goodness. Yeah. So there's, I think what it comes down to is really like, because I too would want to spend time reflecting and spend time in prayer and spend time just absorbing God's promises. Mm-hmm. Because I figure if you know that you've only got 6 months to live, then that means that there's going to be some dark days ahead. And I think you need to be able to hold on to hope. Mm-hmm. And there's so much hope in Scripture, and especially when you're looking at the Psalms and at Proverbs. And where is it that there's like a whole bunch of be strong and courageous? Mm-hmm. Is that in Isaiah or Jeremiah? One of those Old Testament prophets. Just there's that repetitive, be strong and courageous, fear not, take courage. Mm-hmm. All of those kinds of exhortations mm-hmm. To us as believers. And I would just want to rest in those and find comfort and hope in those. Mm-hmm. And then I would just want to tell everybody that I can, that God is God, is God, is God, and God is always on his throne. And they need to surrender their lives to him.
Yeah. Difficult as it may be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I would be, wanting to share with everybody around me just the importance of surrendering your life to God, because really, no matter where we are in life, this life is just a blink of an eye. Mm-hmm. And we need to be investing every moment of every day in our eternal future, not just this here and now, because this here and now is going to be gone so quick. And it's going to look insignificant. Mm-hmm. So the more we can invest in our real future, I think we're going to be a little bit better off. And that was one thing, we've been also going through the Dave Ramsey financial peace thing, mm-hmm. and he's got all of this advice about saving for retirement and things, and that's all well and good. But if you spend your whole time, your whole life saving up for this retirement in this life, then you've missed the most important part of life. Because the retirement you should be saving up for, the place you should be investing your money, your time, your everything in, is eternity. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where it's all about. Your retirement here, that's going to be insignificant. And not to say that it's not important, not to say that it's, we shouldn't spend some time mm-hmm. working towards that, because we should, absolutely. But in terms of priority, that falls down on the list a ways. Yeah. And investing in eternity, investing in God and his will and plans and purposes, that is going to pay off so much bigger than any kind of retirement we could have on this earth. Yeah. And it will pale in comparison. You could retire a billionaire and it would pale in comparison to the sort of life we can look forward to with God. Yeah.
Well, and it really kind of posed the question this morning as I was driving home and kind of reflecting on this topic and knowing that we were coming into the studio today to talk about it. About so how does that mean then that I live now? Because I might only have 6 months. I might only have 6 hours, or right. I could have 60 years. Like, who knows how long I have? I haven't got a doctor or a crystal ball telling me one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing I need to do now is live every day like it's my last day.
Mm-hmm.
And, that whole live like there's no tomorrow kind of theme. In fact, there's a really good book, and I think I meant to look it up. It's, I'll put it in the show notes though, but I think it's called like 30 Days to Live or something like that. And it's written by this couple, and I listened to it on audiobook probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. And it was really interesting because they were talking about like kind of this question and then making this challenge to then live that out, like to really exemplify what that means to live like there's no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I'll put show notes, or I'll put information for that in the show notes and a link to it and stuff. But then, so what does that mean then for us? So if this is the way we want to spend our last 6 months, like for me, I keep thinking, okay, so what do I do? Well, I keep podcasting because, whether we ever reach, more than 20 or 30 people, it doesn't even matter. If we only ever reach like one person that hears our voice and their life is transformed by God because of something that came from this show, then it's more than worth it.
Yeah.
And so we keep podcasting, and we keep serving at our church, and we keep investing wisely in our children above those two things, the podcasting and the church ministry. We spend the time that we can having good conversations with them and making good memories and teaching them what it means to be a godly man and a godly woman, and to love your spouse faithfully and live a surrendered life, and all those things. And then for me, it means I need to devote more of my effort into spending time at the feet of God, and really making that a priority. Because if I'm continuously letting God pour into me, and that's how I'm loving people, because I'm supposed to be loving people the way God does, then I need God's love pouring into me. And if all I'm doing is pouring from myself, then pretty soon I'm going to be empty. But if I keep tapping the source, which is God, then I will never run dry. And I'll never tire of loving people. Yeah. Even when they're unlovable. Like the very slow drivers that I was stuck behind this morning. I had to keep reminding myself, God loves them. God loves them. So do you, Brandy.
Yes. But it's funny because it doesn't seem to matter, what topic we're talking about or whatnot. It always, when you really boil it down, it all comes back to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, that's everything. Yeah. Right there. Beyond those two things, and truly living those out in your life, there's nothing else that's important. People and God, and that's it.
Yeah. And I think I really want to talk some more in the future, not today, but I really want to spend some time talking about loving people we don't agree with. Because I think that's such a...
it's kind of a lost art. It's
a lost art, and I think it's something that is so misunderstood but on both sides. And I think that I just think it's a conversation that needs to just continue to be being had. Continue to have.
Okay, now you're just going to hurt yourself.
I think I already have. It's a conversation that needs to keep happening.
Yes.
So I'd like to talk about that a little bit more in the future because, we end our program saying love God and love people, but it's easy to give lip service to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to say, oh, I love people, be kind, love people,
Yeah.
But really, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we actively pursue that? And how do we go about doing that? Not just with the people that we agree with and get along with,
Right.
but how do we do that with people who we are at complete opposite ends of the spectrum from? Or how do we do that to the guy who's being a complete jerk at the grocery store? Or,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where it gets real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where, it takes a hard look in the mirror to go, am I really doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer typically is no.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rare thing for me to be able to pull off something like that, to act in a loving manner and respond with love to somebody that is making it difficult.
Mm-hmm. And I tend to think that, like, I feel like I do a pretty good job of it a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then I end up feeling very emotionally depleted at the end of a day. And I wonder why.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because I haven't tapped the source, because I'm doing it completely on my own. And then is that really loving the way God would love,
Mm-hmm.
or the way Jesus loved? Because Jesus was so in tune with the Father.
Right.
He never stopped communing with God the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm off just loving people willy-nilly without communing with my God,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm just performing really kind, charitable acts to people, which anybody can do, but that's not loving like Jesus loves.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because sometimes, the way Jesus loved people didn't look like you would expect.
Yeah.
Sometimes he had to tell people some hard truths,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't do it in an unloving manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he always did it with a heart of leading people back to the Father.
Yeah. So anyway, these are things we're wrestling with. I think for me, it really has been kind of a struggle or a wrestle, just because I feel like I've been kind of borderline wanting to cry for about a week or two now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I'm tired and I'm stressed, and there's just a lot going on and whatever. And also, it might be hormonal. Who even knows? I'm 45 now. It's all going to hell in a handbasket. There's a lot happening in life. So who knows what, but this has been kind of a hard time, just sort of processing this part for me. And really recognizing that I have to make some changes in my life if I'm really going to live like there's no tomorrow, and if I'm going to love the way Jesus loves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of superfluous stuff that we can be jettisoning out of our, I did not say that right, that we should jettison out of our lives.
See, it's contagious.
It kind of is. It's all your fault.
My brain funk has morphed onto you.
Yes, because I would never fumble a sentence like that on my own.
Never. All right. Well, I think that hopefully that's given our friends something to kind of consider for themselves. And I really liked when I was working with the boys in my juvenile residential program, I really liked asking the boys, like, if you were to die, tomorrow, what would you want people to say about you and about the life that you lived? And, sometimes you'd get some pretty smart, alecky answers, surprise, surprise, from teenage boys. But sometimes you'd get some pretty heartfelt, compassionate things too that would be said, and I think that's a really important question to ask. How would you spend your last 6 months, and what do you want people to say about you when you die? And I liked your answer that, and I think, Matt, to be honest, I mean, just from my perspective, I could easily say that you're a man of integrity who loved God and loved people.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I think you're pretty fantastic, and if I was gonna say stuff, see, I can't. I'm gonna have a hard time getting going on this. But you bring such joy and life and fun to the people that you're around. You brighten up the room every time you walk into it. And when you decide to do something, you give it your all. There's no halfway, you're all in or you don't bother.
Yeah. And
your commitment and just caring, compassionate for others, it's a joy to be with you every day.
Aw. I should fish for compliments more often. All right, you guys. Well, I hope that does indeed give you guys something to think about. And I really wasn't trying to fish for compliments, I promise. But if you have nice things that you want to say to us, or not nice things you want to say to us, you can email us at roadhometoyou@gmail.com. Please don't say not nice things to us. That'd be really sad. But you don't have to flatter us either.
Yeah, I was going to say, they might need to share something that, well, okay, that could still be nice to share a criticism. But yeah, if you have critiques, and things that we need to improve on, by all means, let us know that.
Yes, we're happy to receive criticism that way.
Yes.
But if you tell me that don't lighten up any room that I walk into, I'm going to cry. So please don't say that. But if you have comments or anything like that, questions, show ideas, prayer requests, friends, we would love to pray for you. We would love to pray with you. If there's something that you're dealing with that you just want to know that you've got somebody praying beside you, please let us know what that is. And we would love to add you to our board of people we pray for. And we will make sure and do that. And otherwise, you can find show notes and all that good fun stuff at our website, roadhometoyou.com, as well as we have our Patreon. If you would like to donate to us, that's patreon.com/roadhometoyou. We'll take you right to us. Plus, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and all those good places. Those are really the only good places, but those places. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. I was going to say it's been really fun, but it's actually made me cry. So I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. It's been a time. We've had a time. And I guess that's it. Matt, do you have anything else to save this?
No, I think we've covered things pretty well. And I think there's some important bits of truth there, and hopefully that shines through our fumbles.
It's up to you, listeners, to separate the wheat from the chaff.
There we go.
All right, you guys, I really want you to take it to heart when I say this. Love God, love people, and pray hard. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.